Welcome to another episode of Not That Hard to Homeschool, the podcast for real people so that you can confidently, competently, and yes, even contentedly provide the high school education that is best for your teens and your family. I'm your host, Lisa Nehring from NotThatHardToHomeschool.com.
Self-paced, no prep for you. It's the homeschool math curriculum I wish I'd started with sooner. Try it free today. Just head to ctcmath.com. That's ctcmath.com. You're going to breathe easier.
Welcome to It's Not That Hard to Homeschool podcast. My name is Lisa Nehring, and I have as a guest today my lovely daughter, Hannah Nehring. And we are going to talk about 10 things we could have done differently as we homeschooled and 10 things we're glad we did. So Hannah, glad you're joining me. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So do you want to start off? We're going to start off with the things we wish we had done differently. Now, I want to put this into context. I homeschooled for 30 years. Hannah is the youngest of 5 kids that I homeschooled, and she graduated from high school 4 years ago or 3 years ago.
It's 2026.
It
I
is.
was 19.
Yeah.
So
A couple of years ago.
yeah, 4 years ago.
So we started homeschooling in 1991, pre-internet, very low-key homeschooling. We were really a great books approach. We went into classical education for quite a while. And of course, with the advent of the internet, that changed a lot of things. Hannah completed her high school years really doing most of her classwork online, really, at True North Academy. And she graduated fluent in Hebrew and conversant in Spanish. So her homeschool looked a lot different than our older kids did. So I just wanted to put that into context as we talk about what we wish we'd done differently. So Hannah, you want to lead out? What do you wish homeschooling had looked like that we didn't cover?
I think what we did, a lot of it was really, really good. And I think it really prepared me well, not only for what I'm doing, but the world that I live in and the people that I live in and all that's not live in, but the people that I interact with and stuff like that. And so I think that was really, really important. But one thing I wish that I had done differently, that we had done differently, was learning math conceptually and then working backwards into mechanics instead of, at least for the higher maths. For the easier maths, like that was no problem, but for the higher maths especially, I wish like it was more conceptual at the beginning and then you would work backward to more of like the mechanics. And
what does that mean conceptually?
So like instead of saying
we're going to
jump in, instead of saying we're just going to jump into this problem, talking about this is the picture that we're solving for, and we're solving this specific piece out of this picture and breaking that down. The trouble is a lot of math teachers, and when I was in high school, I was using more of like tutoring kind of style. A lot of the math teachers, they get math, but they don't get how to teach it. Right. And so, and that's a huge disparity. And it's a problem across the United States, I think.
Yes.
And, but it would have been really helpful if, they had just been like, okay, so, we're solving for XYZ within this picture or this concept or something like that. Because now that I'm older and I've done more logic and stuff and not just logic, but, debate and critical thinking. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, that's what that was for. I wish they had just said that, because then I could have used it and paid attention and known what I was paying attention to instead of just learn this math problem, learn this formula. Especially like the fundamentals of algebra is actually really important once you get into forming a thesis, but also once you get into detective reasoning or deductive reasoning, like I forget which one it is, but if you listen to a lot of crime novels, they're actually using algebra to solve the case. And so I wish it had been taught like that.
Oh, that's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah.
You're a code cracker and you love patterns. So I actually had that on my list too. I wish we'd outsourced hard sciences for high school and labs and math earlier than we did. Now, we did offer several of our kids tutoring, and you ended up doing some classes online. We do a lot of science in our home. My husband's a scientist at heart, and so my kids know their way around the NASA website and NOAA.org really, really well. So weather and astronomy and the space communities, those kind of things were discussed in our home a lot, as well as archaeology and different sciences. But we didn't have a really methodical way of studying sciences once we got chemistry and above. And I do have a couple mathy kids. Hannah's one of them that would have really loved that rigor if it had been taught from somebody who was truly a scientist.
Yeah.
I am not. And I love math too, but I'm not a math teacher. And I felt like if we had had more resources for math and the hard scientists, a couple of my kids might have chosen different career directions because they're naturally inclined to that. But I did not have what it took to keep that, that momentum going, really, honestly, because that's not my strength. It's not something I wanted to turn into a strength. When you have 5 kids and you're working, it's hard to do everything at once. It's just the bottom line. So it's interesting that we agreed on that for sure.
Part of it too is like while you're in it, it's hard to look back and be like, while you're in the midst of homeschooling, it's hard to be like, oh, this is what we need to focus on. And so hindsight is always 20/20, so to say. But
well, and tutoring does get expensive. For my middle kiddo, super mathy. He was doing calc in high school. And so we got a math tutor for him. But sometimes when you have a large family or certain budget constraints, $35 to $75 an hour is just not in the budget too. So there's so many more resources now than there had been, which we're really grateful for. Yeah. Okay. What else? So science and math, we both agree on. Sure. We did this a little bit, but I really wish we had given our kids more agency in deciding what they were going to do. And we did that. I love unschooling, like the John Holt, truly the unschooling pedagogy of really what are the kids interested in and what do they want to do. And we tried to resource and put some time and intention towards that. But I really wish we had created more situations where you guys decided and had more agency to make some bigger decisions, because I think it would have helped you guys strategize your own life earlier. And I just think that that is so important in life, that if we're telling our kids what they're supposed to do and what the end goal is and how to get there, we're setting up for them so much that you get to a point in life where you have to do it yourself anyway. I think earlier would have been better.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think having a lot more strategy in high school would have been more helpful. Because I was thinking about my own high school. I had a very unique high school where I had all the credits that I needed to graduate early.
Yeah.
And so that kind of changed the ball game. So then I strategized for college when I should have been strategizing for life. And I think it would have been helpful to have some help with strategizing. Okay, so what are you going to do after college instead of making college the goal? Or maybe not necessarily a career, but definitely like a overarching skill that I could have made profitable. Or, just some kind of strategy that would have helped me long-term instead of just short-term.
Yeah.
And beyond 5 years too. And I think more, not just strategy, but also systems, like how to think about a big decision in life rather than just, how to navigate this specific decision and stuff like that. Having systems and frameworks to work through those different things would have been really, really helpful. And I think that's not just me, that's everyone across the board, especially in my generation. And the older kids in my generation, of the older kids in Gen Z, there's so much that changed in my generation, not just with COVID, but and not just AI, but just the way that people interact, the way that people connect, all that sort of thing. Like, even just, this is a silly example, but navigating relationships like dating or guy-girl relationships and stuff like that. I have nobody to ask about that. It is so different. Like, I can't go to someone, like, even asking you and dad, like, it's not helpful to have like 1960s kind of.
Hey, I'm not that old.
Well, but having that kind of framework, it's not very helpful because it's a completely different world. Yeah. Like,
it's completely different from when your older siblings were going through
it. Absolutely. And honestly, even their advice isn't helpful because no guy is asking me for my number. No guy is asking me direct questions. Right. It's all more vague. It's all more meta language, and it's all happening online. And that, again, that's a silly example, but that's just one way that
is not silly at all. And you're not the only one dealing
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
important. It's very
Absolutely.
important.
So having like a system of, okay, so here's a framework. What's your ultimate goal
Right.
in this interaction, or, you know, making a life plan or whatever. Having a system to think through that so that you can navigate that situation would have been so helpful.
Yeah.
So, and that's not necessarily something that you can teach with a curriculum, but, and there's not a lot of resources for that, but that would have been helpful.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. I think along with that, it kind of goes together. I wish we had started a business, or I had said to each of our kids, you need to start a business this year. Here's $300. I will help you scaffold it and figure it out, but this is what you have to do. And it could have been simple. It could have been dog sitting. It could have been doing whatever. But I think that goes along with what you were just saying, is really having a strategy. And I mean, I've talked about this so much before, is entrepreneurship is one of those skills everybody needs to have in this digital global gig economy. And of course we homeschooled way before it was digital or global gig or any of those kind of
still had
things.
E-commerce.
Yeah,
stuff.
we did. Yeah. We had e-commerce, but I wish that had been more of an integral part of what we had done with the homeschool. And that had been, like a challenge. Or listen, entrepreneurial curriculum is difficult to find even now, but that we put it together because we're very entrepreneurial minded as a family, and it just would have made sense. I wish we had, strategized that piece more and better and earlier.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that, especially learning sales earlier on would have been super, super helpful. I think we all each had an opportunity to do that because I was doing conferences with you since I was 13. And so I was learning how to get someone to do, a simple micro agreement of take this, form or whatever. And so I think we had decent practice with that. And then also we were really involved in our local community and making and recruiting stuff, especially in junior high. I was really involved with that and getting people into the program, which actually is weird to think about.
A couple other programs, not necessarily True North.
Not necessarily True North, but so I think
it is. You really were.
Yeah, because they
high.
asked me to speak several times and to recruit people and go talk to students and shebang. So I was doing a lot of that in junior high. And I think each of us had different opportunities like that. But part of the problem was we lived rural and that, you don't have a neighborhood to go sell eggs or whatever that most kids do. And so that was very difficult. And there wasn't a lot of frameworks for building an online business at the time too. So I think those were obstacles that none of us could really figure out how to navigate at the time. But I think understanding sales and entrepreneurship would have been very, very helpful.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think too, I wish I did have sales down. I wish we had been more strategic about teaching sales strategies, because sales is one of those skills. If you know how to sell, you can always make money for yourself, and there's strategies to know how to sell. So I wish we'd done that a little bit more specifically. But also I do wish we had focused more on real world money issues, like how to balance a checkbook, what do taxes mean, debt, opportunity cost, return on time, return on investments. And we did talk about those things in our house, but we did a more traditional, typical course of study where I think, again, if we'd had a business that the kids had been in charge of, where they had had balance sheets and like, this is income, this is outgo, those kind of things. And also, again, opportunity costs. So not just return on investment, but return on time. I think those would have been really helpful concepts for all of our kids to learn more specifically.
I 100% agree. Those are skills that are so important, especially going into the first test that kids have these days, which is, are you going to go to college or not? That's like the number one first financial decision that any student makes. And I think we did some of that. We did a lot of leadership classes and I think we did a personal finance class, but so we did a little bit of it, but it wasn't really proactive finance or really proactive personal financial planning, which would have been really, really, really helpful. But I think even if you don't have that, you can still learn from the people around you. Like I learned from, you're in dad's student loan debt. I learned that very, very well. but also watching, also
Yeah.
watching my older siblings as well go through college of like, okay, so this is how to get a loan. This is how not to get a loan. And
Mhm.
also whatever you can do, don't get a loan.
Right.
Because
And as far as like
Take
getting
it
through
over.
college early and fast
Yes.
versus later and drawing it out.
yes.
And our kids all went through college with part and full-time scholarships. One of our kids did a Nat Guard scholarship, which was huge. I mean, so there was different ways to navigate it. They all had different challenges. And college costs less when our oldest daughter went through college. Honestly, I'll be honest, it's gone up exponentially year by year. So, yeah, okay, I guess we would agree on that, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Okay, you want to go next? What else do you have?
I wish I had done a complete physics course, which sounds kind of funny, but I think it's something that I would have really liked. And physics is, I think, honestly, personally, I think physics should be taught first, and it should be taught conceptually instead of mathematically. And then later, if you want to do, physics or whatever, then you do the mathematical. But physics is so intuitive, and it's kind of funny that it's harder because it's the thing that we experience the most. I mean, you experience chemistry and you experience biology on a daily basis, but you certainly experience physics on a daily basis. And it's probably the first thing that we, are aware of. Like when we're babies, we learn how to crawl.
Right.
We're experiencing gravity. Like it's one of the most simple things, but it often gets overlooked. And I feel like it gets overcomplicated, just like with higher math. So I wish there was a way to do that with high schoolers.
Or even conceptual and junior high, conceptual physics and chemistry. Maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which I thought, I accidentally read this one page. I thought it was for homework, but it was not in the physics book when I took a half semester of it.
A half a year of it, one semester.
Not even a full semester.
Okay.
And Richard Feynman actually believed that physics shouldn't even be taught in high school or in most colleges because he felt like it was so poorly taught by people who didn't really understand it, and that devalued the importance of it and put a bad taste in students' mouths. Bless you. For physics. And he's like, it's such a beautiful, wonderful thing. Why would you tamper with how beautiful it is and put that bad taste in students' mouths with a bad teacher? So he actually believed less people should be taught physics so that they could be taught it better. So there's a lot of controversy over that, but I thought that was a really interesting concept. And, could be applied to a lot of different things, honestly.
It could be. So, I mean, I think the takeaway here is just because it's a typical course of study, does that mean it's a good one? And what are your kids really interested in? Because like I said, I have a couple kids who are very mathematical and very science minded, and they would have loved it. They would have loved it if we had had more, somebody in their life on the daily who was a hard science type of person. So,
well, and I would add to that too, like just because it's a typical course of study, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily for your kid, but mostly the way that it's taught doesn't necessarily make it good. Because, and especially now with AI, what you can do is you can take the way that it's being taught and you can say, okay, my student is better at kinesthetic, or, they're struggling with this particular aspect of the lesson, make a lesson plan to, break this down or whatever, and really hone in on that. And I feel like AI is really great equalizer in that way, but,
and right. And that, that just shows like, no matter how many years of teaching or educating you've done or not done, you have tools available to you to really go faster, farther. Or farther, faster. Either way works.
Vice versa.
So that's a great point. That's a very great point. To use the tools you have on your computer even, right? Okay. One of the things I had down was mentorship, and we did this a little bit because we were involved with theater. We were really heavily involved in theater and politics, honestly. And so all of our kids did a Shakespeare camp every year, and they did a one-act play theater group every winter. Then we brought Team Pack to our state. Several of our kids actually flew around the country and worked on Senate races and that kind of thing. So theater and politics played a big part of our life. However, finding mentors is difficult. And a lot of times we think, well, if our kid's supposed to have a mentor, it'll fall out of the sky. That doesn't really happen. We have to be intentional with it. I mean, you can't be everything to your kids. And that is one of the things I wish I had really taken to heart earlier, is that you don't, you're the mom, you're the housekeeper, you're the homeschooler. And if you're creating things for your kids, like co-ops or class days or bringing Teen Pact or starting a business, or you have a side hustle or a part-time job, which so many of us do, there's only so much of you to go around, right? You still have to sleep. You probably have a spouse and you have to take care of things. Mm-hmm. So finding people intentionally to feed into your kids. Now, I want to share a cool example. When we lived in New Mexico, my older two girls were really into horseback riding. And guess what? One of the nation's award-winning cutting horseback riders lived in our city and went to our church. And so they got to go take horseback riding lessons with her for hours a week in exchange for mucking out her stalls. They thought that was the best deal ever. They'd spend a half a day or a day around horses. They didn't care if they were mucking out stalls and getting like these expert horseback riding lessons. What a mentor, right? Mm-hmm. And so our kids have had mentors, but again, I wish we'd been more intentional about certain types of things. Like if we'd known that, back to the science kind of thing. But what do you think? Thoughts?
No, I think that's really good feedback. I think that's really good feedback. I didn't have that on my list, but I think too, kids aren't often given a framework of what a mentor is, and so they kind of miss those opportunities. And I think that should be more, normalized in education is how to look for a mentor. Yeah. But also taking advantage of the opportunities that you do have. I would say one of my very important mentors was my teachers. I really took advantage of that wherever I went to, like both in college and also in high school, since I had most of my high school online. I really took advantage of those relationships and really befriended my teachers and took advantage of that. And I think that's a really, really great resource because they teach you a lot, not just because then they start sharing resources with you of like, okay, so you're learning, German or whatever. Here's some extra resources because then you're talking to them about their passion, and you might find passion in that. And so that can really speak life to you and really be a valuable resource. But also one of the most important mentors that I've had was my first boss. And I worked at a chiropractic here locally. And I learned so much, not necessarily from the job, but from my boss, because he had really this, I don't want to say old school, but really this honor code mentality of as soon as someone walks, it was at a chiropractic, as soon as someone walks in the door, they're our responsibility. So even if they're being a butt, they still are our responsibility. So we have to treat them right. This is our opportunity to really bring healing and to really bring life and speak life and often the gospel into that person's life. He wasn't really a charismatic believer or anything like that, but you do come up against a lot of spiritual warfare in just the health world, right? Because it's all tied together. So really being aware of that and really being prayerful in that was just his whole mindset towards it was so valuable. And all of that stuff really has helped me throughout life, and focusing on like, okay, so what is important? Right. Like your objective is to help this person ultimately heal. So, okay, if this therapy that, we've prescribed is going to be more painful, then, figure out how to make the therapy a little bit less painful so that they're going to heal. Right. And taking that mentality into college, taking that mentality into the workforce has been so helpful. And the whole idea of it's your personal honor on the line when you're interacting with a customer, when you're interacting with something. And when you resource them, you're not just doing an upsell. You're being, you're being good to your honor. You're being good to that person, and you're providing healing and health to that person. So,
that's a great example. Yeah. That's a fantastic example.
So don't lose those opportunities.
Yeah. You actually had another really important mentor in your life through some of the language classes at True North that really changed your life. Like you really got not only the foreign language, but into a whole mindset that is really like giving you some direction that maybe you didn't have before. So yeah,
I would say Rabbi Fisher, who teaches Hebrew at True North, he was a huge mentor. I did Hebrew with him for 5 years, 6 years, and biblical and modern. And it wasn't just about the language. It was how to study the Bible. It was
Right.
how to talk about the Bible. It was
Mhm.
how to
Think Middle Eastern.
think not just Middle Eastern, but just think from another person's perspective.
Right.
Like, and how to really seek out what that other person is thinking. Like he really helped me in a lot of ways with that. And also Adam Fruzan, who teaches politics, philosophy, and economics at North. The Socratic method that he taught and the way that you think about politics, the way that you think about economics really was life-changing to me. And I reference back to, both those teachers, but especially PPE all the time with politics, all the time with economics. And yeah, so really taking advantage of the teachers that you have available and the relationships you have available is huge.
That makes me feel so much better because you did have mentors.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to add that to the positive list. I think
I have one that complements that as well, which would be, I wish we had done more networking. So I think mentors is a good one, but also just networking with local business people, local business people and any kids in the area who are also, I think we get really stuck on as homeschoolers socializing, but I think we should focus more on, networking and building those loose connections, because that's what the really successful people do is they don't focus on, I want 27 best friends or even just one best friend. I want connections. That's what they focus on. And I think bringing that mentality into the homeschool world would be so life-changing.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's like a Rotary Club for high schoolers, but maybe you could get involved in I don't know. You can figure it out.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Or like finding or even starting a Rotary Club in your church specifically that would include high schoolers or kids who are trying to become professionals or who are looking for a career in politics or in the arts, specifically storytelling, or, just figuring out how to connect with people. And if it's not available, figuring out how to build that table and invite people in. Would have been really, really helpful.
And again, living rurally made it a little bit difficult. We did a lot of that. Like we did teen nights and things like that. And we were always doing like info meetings and stuff. But again, living rurally made it a little bit challenging, but that's a great point. And valuing those loose connections too. Super helpful.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else?
No, go ahead.
Okay. One of the things I wish we'd done differently is done more testing. Now, I say that with a couple caveats in mind. My husband used to do disabilities testing way back in graduate school. That was our bread and butter, actually. And he was just like, I don't like testing. It pigeonholes people, and then that's who they are. They take it on as an identity. So we kind of avoided testing. However, we have two kids. We have at least 2 kids who are doubly gifted. It means they're like way out in front in one area and they're really struggling in another area. But kids who are doubly gifted often can mask the areas of struggle because they're so far out in front in other areas. So I think testing would have helped us understand that a little bit better and been able to resource our kids, and honestly, probably helped me have a lot more patience with what was going on. And I just think testing can be super helpful for understanding learning disabilities or challenges. The other thing too, I think it would have been really helpful to do career exploration testing earlier. A couple of my kids, it just came up with stuff that we never would have thought of. When Hannah did career exploration, her top 13 things was, you need to be a surgeon. You need to be a vascular surgeon. You need to be a heart surgeon. You need to do.
It was the surgeon. It was all manager.
Oh, it was. I thought it was. It was all medical and manager.
And then my favorite one was a mortician.
A mortician.
That one made
so anyway, I just think it could have helped direct a little bit better. We did do that, but later than I think would have been helpful. Earlier would have been better. So
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I'll be honest.
Okay.
I didn't really find any of the tests that we did very helpful. I thought the professional, I'm not even kidding. I thought the professional ones were kind of stupid. I would never consider any of the things that it came up with, and the things that I was interested in, it didn't come up.
It didn't come up,
which really counterworked me. But also the personality test. I don't know. Maybe it's just my personality. I don't know. Every single time I take a personality test, I get depressed.
Oh, me too.
I have a life crisis, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible person, and I'm the party person too. That's the funny thing is, I walk away from it, and I'm like, I'm just boring and sad, and it's like, you're a really fun fun person. So I should be flattered, but I'm just mad that I wasn't the Einstein. I don't know. But I wish, like, I didn't really find those very helpful, but I think honestly, the more skills that you're exposed to, the more helpful it is, because then you're exposed to lots of different things, and you're having to learn and grow, and you're having to think about, okay, what am I good at? What am I interested in? And you're having to expand. But I think what would have been helpful instead is having to focus on one skill specifically over, like, for a set amount of time, would have been really helpful. Or, I mean, even better would be having to focus on a certain skill for a certain amount of time, and then having a reward afterward of, okay, so you're learning a language and then you get a trip, or, you know, something to kind of reinforce the skill that you've learned and reward it. But also at the same time, a reward that's still going to challenge you mentally and physically and emotionally. So I don't know that I would disagree with that, but
okay. Well, I'm going to still go back and say testing. I don't think testing should be the dirty word that it is in the homeschool community. I think testing can be a diagnostic tool. And if you're really struggling or your kids are really struggling, then it might be really helpful. That's one of the reasons I like the performance series test, which we offer, which it actually tests by individual and grade level. So you can see where your kids are at by grade level, but also by individual ability. And that can really be a great diagnostic tool. So I think anything else you have on your list?
I think I wish I had learned more about strategy in high school, just like strategizing a plan. I think we mentioned that earlier. But along those lines, like, I wish I hadn't planned to go to college. Really, honestly, I built my whole high school plan around that, because I was hoping, like, okay, so I'm going to build a strategy to go to college, and then once I get to college, I'm going to up my value in the professional world so that I can move on to the next thing. That's how I was thinking about it, and that's not what it's like at all. So I wish I hadn't done that, especially since I put a lot of time and effort into that, and a lot of money, because, you know, you have to pay for the ACT, but then not only that, like, you want to pay for a certain score, and then you have to pay for the tuition, and then you have to pay for the books, and blah, 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 blah. Like, there's a lot of hidden fees that you don't think of, just to get your foot in the door. And then once your foot is in the door, there, you know, you're just a number in the system. They're not actually going to think about you really at all. And so I wish I hadn't planned for that. I wish I had done something differently and focused more on my, you know, what kind of profession do I want to have? What kind of person do I want to be? Rather than what kind of
degree or college you wanted to go to.
What kind of box I wanted to check. So I wish I had thought about that differently. And I wish I had learned more storytelling and communication. I think we did a lot of that, and that was really good. But I wish I had honed in on that more in high school, because that's so valuable. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, just the art of storytelling. Because you're going to be doing that in marketing, you're going to be doing that in sales, you're going to be doing that in speaking. You're going to be doing that in presenting ideas. You're going to be doing that in ministry. You're going to be doing that
as a lawyer,
as a teacher. Literally anything. As an entrepreneur, you're going to be doing storytelling. So unless you're in the sciences, and even then, when you're in the sciences, you're still telling the story. You're still telling the story of an atom. You're still telling the story of whatever. So I wish I had done more of that. At least perfected that earlier. I think that would have been really helpful. Kind of along those lines, I wish I had done more debate. I was pretty good at debate. And I think I only lost 2 debates that I had participated in. The one because we had evidence that I brought to my team, and I'm like, we need to do this in our mock trial, and we didn't have time. We found it like 24 hours beforehand, and we didn't have time to add it in. So that was on us. And the second time I lost because one of the members of the team was kind of being a butt and made it all about her. So what do you do in that sort of instance? But even when I had like total BS kind of debate roles, I could still win it because I knew how to act. And so I wish I had done more of that, either in a club or whatever, because I think that would have opened up a lot of doors that would have been a lot more helpful than honestly than going to college. Like, I think that would have been a better strategy. But
interesting. Okay.
Those were kind of
awesome. Okay.
Oh, I had one more.
Yep.
I wish I had done more community service in high school, really honestly,
Okay. Uh-huh.
because when you're applying to jobs, when you're applying to college, when you're really doing anything, having community service is really helpful, but also more importantly, it gives you perspective. And I think a lot of homeschoolers grow up in a bubble, and homeschoolers, but also just Christian kids, grow up in a bubble. And that gives you a lot of perspective. And I'm not talking about a mission trip, because that's a different country. And you're going to say, oh, well, that's a third world country, or, oh, that's Mexico, or whatever. You're going to blame it on the third world. You're not going to look at it as, this could have been me. This, there's same location, same language, same mind, same brilliance, different result. And it's very humbling, and it's also gives you a great amount of perspective and really helps you be grateful. And I think a lot of kids in my generation really need to focus on being grateful instead of saying, oh, I didn't have this, I didn't have that, or I didn't have white privilege, or I did have white privilege. Like, instead of focusing on all the silly little things that we put in the way of our own success, focusing on, I had amazing opportunities, and I'm trying to do the best that I can. And also, God is good and merciful. And I don't know.
But for the grace of God, go I. I do think community, and we did do quite a bit of community service.
We did.
But it's interesting that you say more. So awesome. Okay. So those are things we wish we could have done differently. And now we're going to flip it and say, share the things that we think that we did well. So thanks for tuning in to Things We Wish We'd Done Differently as we homeschooled. Hannah, thanks for being my guest today. It's been great to talk to you. We're going to be back for things we feel like we did well, and we hope that you stay tuned for that episode to just get an idea of the things that we think we've really knocked out of the park as we homeschooled. So this is Lisa from It's Not That Hard to Homeschool. Listen, it is not that hard to homeschool. We believe in you. You can do it. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening.